Aisha, would you like to turn on your audio? I think her audio is up. We're still waiting. We're still waiting for the director and the cast to come on. For those who have just joined us, please wait with us. We'll start as soon as they come on.
Arpita, you did a good job of RJing yesterday.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm glad you heard me.
Yeah.
Many of you might remember.
Here's to Shalom Bollywood.
That's what I'm missing, a glass of wine. Yes.
Well, half of it is Sprite, but I want to make it look like it's a big girl drink, so.
Rachel, welcome.
Hello.
Rachel.
Yes, everyone. Shalom.
Hello.
Cheers.
We are waiting on Dan.
Yeah.
We have with us Sama, Haider's daughter, is here. And we'll start. I'll just sort of set the protocol for the meeting and just wanted to point out that Rachel Rubin.
I'm good. You can reach it.
I have the movie. For tomorrow, I want to see.
And she joins us from New York. And with us is Sama Ali, who is the daughter of Haider Ali, granddaughter of Esther Abraham.
I can put it on the computer. You want me to put it on the computer?
Aisha Marjara, some of you might remember from our film festival.
Here last time.
He directed a wonderful film, Venus.
Oh, you're going to send it?
Might remember that film. So she joins us too, and she's from Canada.
Film Society picture.
You might want to just post on the chat to have them turn on their.
Hi, this is Abhijit.
Hi, Abhijit. Welcome.
I'm walking in a park. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You have our permission to walk in a park.
We're waiting for Dan and Haider, and I need to keep track of the time. It's 7:11.
That's auspicious.
That's auspicious. Send him a quick note then, or something on.
Okay, can we start with the introductions of the film people that are already here?
I think I'm going to start. Just give me 1 second. You see what's going on with Danny. You say hi, I'm waiting. My apologies. Okay, Abhijit Desai is here and Julie Desai is here as well. And Amrita and Menaka. Preet, I see Preet well over here. So I want to start off by first setting the protocol for the day. And I just want to say to everyone that we are still waiting on the director and Mr. Haider Ali of the cast. But we have with us Rachel Rubin, who's here with us today. Rachel is the granddaughter of Miss Rose, the famous Miss Rose. And we have Sama Ali, the daughter of Haider Ali, with us. So we decided to go ahead and start, and we'll wait for the others to join in. I just want to give the protocol for today's Zoom session. I'll be interviewing the director and the cast, following which I'll turn over the questions to the audience. So I really request all of you to have your videos on so that we can see everyone. And then maybe just give a little wave so we know who's talking when you're talking. And Amit, who is running the session today, will mute everyone while one person is talking so that there isn't too much noise. I just ask that when you begin to speak, please introduce yourself before you ask your questions. You may also put your questions down in the chat box because we'll monitor it, and Amit will be, Amit or I will call out folks who put in their questions there. So then your questions can be asked, and you can actually talk with the director and the cast. So with that said, let's start. All right. It gives me great pleasure, guys, today to welcome two folks who are directly connected to the film. First, Rachel Rubin, who's the granddaughter of Miss Rose, and Sama Ali, who is the daughter of Haider Ali and the granddaughter of Pramila. We are waiting on Professor Danny Ben Moshe to join us from Melbourne, and Mr. Haider Ali to join us from India. It's very early in the morning in India. And Sama Ali comes to us from London, and Rachel Rubin right now is in New York. So thank you, guys. Thank you all for being here. So I guess my first question will then go to Rachel, who's Rose's granddaughter. Miss Rose, as you know, was did very well in Bollywood. I wanted to know from you, Rachel, what was the first time that you realized that your grandmother was this famous actress? And looking back at her films, what nuggets of learning did you take away? Did you realize growing up she was so famous?
No, I guess I was very little. I was 9 years younger than my sister. My mom was already late married and had a baby quite late. So by the time I came along, the rest of the generation, my sisters and then older, seemed like very far away from me. I would see my grandmom once a year. They would come with her second husband, who was American. They lived in LA, and they would come for family visits with my aunt and my cousin. And it was, I don't believe it was any part of conversation or mentioned or talked about until I was a teenager. Until I started getting out and about, and I got a few offers. I was on stage dancing in a show called Evita. Mm-hmm. My mom was a bit careful and wary, and I couldn't understand why. And then she talked to me, and she told me about my grandmother, and showed me a lot of her brochures and pamphlets. We didn't have access to the movies, so I couldn't see her at that point. I began to see much later when I got involved in film, and I was privileged enough to find little clips of hers. So no, I had no idea. She was very low key. She was well retired. There were never any there was one photograph of hers on our sideboard, big photograph, beautiful, one of her publicity stills. You know, as a child, you don't compute things like that.
Right, that's true. But you are today a filmmaker yourself, an editor. You were a very famous model. And I'm sure at some point you begin to go back, reach back and see what your grandmother has done maybe, or?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, once I understood who she was, and, you know, my mom talked about the silent movies moving into the talkies and how bridging that gap was very hard for a lot of actors of the time. There was a whole new learning. There was a whole new dimension to their work that I think a lot of them who had maybe, like my grandma, had already reached, you know, her 40s. It was already time for her to sort of move on. And so she, you know, I think she struggled, and she had her success. One of her dearest friends was Mubarak, the actor Mubarak.
Yeah.
And he was a huge, loud, wonderful presence, always attached to his big bottle of whiskey. And he could be in our home, and he made friends with my dad. My dad was, a man's man. He was a drinker and a shikari and a fisherman and all this. So those two men got on, even though they were a generation apart. So after Rose left, Mubarak kept the friendship with the family. And so a lot of then, I would question him and ask him questions, because then I started getting more and more interested in that world. And then, of course, when I became a model, I got some offers for Bollywood, and I was a little wary myself. But it was really comforting to know that I already had that in my family. She was a lovely grandmother, and she was very unvain. So it was a very ordinary sort of relationship that we shared.
Okay. Oh my gosh, it must have been fascinating for you, though, as you were growing up, to really realize how much you had contributed. And have you met Sama before? Because I believe you're third cousins, right?
Well, no, hello. I don't think we met. Have we? No, I can't hear you.
Well, Esther and Rose were cousins, and right, and that's why I said I believe you're third cousins. Give me 1 second, because my battery, there's something going on here, but I'm back. Okay, I'm back. My computer was just about to die, so I rescued it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't believe we've met, Rachel. Although I think your grandmother was probably quite pivotal in my grandmother's entry into the Indian film industry, because she was born and brought up in Calcutta, and then when she had a few traumatic early incidents in her life, and after that, for a holiday, she went to Bombay. And when she went to Bombay, she went to visit her cousin Rose, who at that time was a very big star, and she was on set while Rose was doing a film. And in those days, like you probably heard in Danny's film already, it wasn't common for women to act in films. It was looked down upon. But obviously for the Anglo-Indian women and for the Jewish women, they were a bit more westernized. So for them, I think it was not as, I don't know, in the conservative communities it probably was, but they clearly wanted to breach those boundaries. So the director, liked the way she looked, and she said, and he said, would you like to act in films? And she was anyway always, a dramatist in real life and in real life. She lived drama her whole life. She just enjoyed flamboyance and everything for her was larger than life. Her entire life, even in day to day, but everything was just larger than life. So obviously she said yes, and that's where her career started.
So I want to talk a little bit about the movie now. I want to move into the film. How did, and this question is for Rachel, at what point and how did Danny get to know you even existed, or how did he track you? and looking yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. One of the things that has been on my mind since your invitation is how Danny, he was a detective, he was a filmmaker, he's a documentary filmmaker, but he was a detective of sorts. And the trouble and time that he has taken to complete this piece of work, I feel like my whole adult life has been in spurts about meeting Dan. When I met him at first, he had an assistant. I forget the name now. Young assistant who somehow connected the dots to me. And that was our first just a talk. I wish he was online, because I think, he needs to tell this. I'm not really up with how he worked it out. But the first time, I also didn't really understand the value of what he was doing. because, like grandma was grandma. I mean, I knew grandma was a divorcee in the time that, that was not a done thing, that she had left Calcutta, come to Bombay, started dance school here with the support of her parents, to bring up her 2 children, my mom and my aunt, and she was in movies. But suddenly there was this talk about the Jews being sort of forerunners of the acting community. And this sort of opened up all these things for me. He informed me. So I think it was just largely detective work. I think he just unpeeled the onion. It was one layer leading to another layer leading to another person. And film anywhere in the world is very, very 6 degrees, right? In any film community. And I think that's how he found it. But I mean, kudos to him. He just went at it and wouldn't give up. And he kept coming back and he kept coming back.
Yeah, Danny has done a lot of hard work. I think it started with someone pointed him towards my dad. Oh, there he is. He's joined. Because my dad was already part of the industry, so he was an easy contact. And
Right.
He's a bit of a film historian in himself. He's a bit of a film encyclopedia. He knows the industry, the parts of the industry that even other people don't know about. So it was a lot of chats with my dad where things started to unfold, and then Danny went on researching, and every lead that my dad gave him, Danny went and investigated to verify, is that fact, is that fiction, is that, and that's how it just kept building and building. And Danny's just gone, way above and beyond what we even thought would be possible for him to gather in this documentary.
And I think he did a wonderful job of really describing the 2 identities, the cultural identity of India, the cultural identity of the Jews in India. And my next question is for
Rafi, Danny is here.
Hello, Danny. Welcome, Danny. Welcome, Danny. I don't see you, but welcome. Danny, nice to have you here with us. We kind of started the session a little earlier, and I was talking with Rachel and with Sama Ali, who's the daughter of Haider Ali, and Haider just came on. So I just wanted to say, this is our 5th week of running the at-home series of the film festival during the pandemic, and we were trying to show some new release films as well as some films that we've shown at our festival in the past, and then Zoom with the director to learn more about the story behind the story. So may I move to you, Danny? Can you hear me? No, he can't. I don't think Danny can hear me, but Haider, I have a question for you. So listening to you, I mean, you were just awesome in the film.
Just sorry to interrupt you. I would like to start off by saying the world of today is something which is a fantasy which when we were kids, there used to be a crystal ball, and or there used to be a mirror, tell me, and the whole world could appear on that crystal ball. And today, this is like a crystal ball, Australia. And it's become magic, it's become real. Yes, abracadabra and zoom. And
right. That's Zoom, I guess.
So it's magic. Though Jules Verne wrote, there was a classic comic I read, Jules Verne, The Time Machine and Man on the Moon. And it was like, we are a time machine. If you take a jet, and I'm in India, I have to fly to America. So I go to it yesterday. And I'm today here in India, and I want to go to my future. I fly to Australia. I'm in the future. So at the same time, you're in the past, present, and the future. So we've also become so global. I mean, it's real. It's real.
It is absolutely real. Haider, I want to say
everybody today is a Saturday, and Shabbat Shalom to everybody.
Shalom.
Sad that on, but Rachel's on. That's good.
Yes.
And
Thank
there's
you.
a photograph. I don't know if you could see.
I can see that. I can see all the photographs in the background. Thank you for being up. We're really grateful that you could join us. Yes, we see all the photographs in the background.
Photograph right and above. There is a photograph where you could see Auntie Rose sitting next to Nargis, and adjacent to her is Shobna Samarth, the grandmother of Kajol and mother of Tanuja and Nutan. And on the other side is Raj Kapoor, and next to him is sitting Ruby Myers. And above Ruby Myers is my father Kumar, then my aunt Marina, that's my mother Pramila, and next to my mother is Nutan, just a 13-year-old girl. I mean, that's a landmark photograph I have there up.
I would love a copy of it when you get a chance. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. For Rachel, see Rose there, and 5 heroines are there. Shobna Samat, Rose, Nargis, Ruby Myers, and Pramila. There are 5 heroines in that one photograph. And Nutan, who became an heroine later on. That's a landmark photograph. It was at the of the film my mother produced and my father directed. It was the Murat that this photograph was taken on. It was starring Raj Kapoor, Nargis, and Motila. Produced by Pramila, directed by Kumar, and the music was Madan Mohan.
And that is fascinating that many of the Jewish ladies were not only pioneers in acting, but they also had their own studio houses, and they produced films as well. A question for you, Haider. You made some very important points about diversity and plurality in India. And I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit about your views on that. And then the main question is something more personal. What is it about your mother that you miss the most when you look back on her stellar rise in the industry?
Her life. She was bubbly, even if sometimes she was in any kind of stress or strain. She was not put down by situations or by people. She had her own self-esteem that made her bounce back and get that intellect in her to reason and say, okay, that's the past, let's go further. That is one quality which I miss, and I try to, it's in my DNA, so if I try a little bit, I do get that same quality, but not as quick as her. It was like a switch on and a switch off. That about my mother, which I miss, you said.
Yeah.
And as you specifically asked me a question about my mother, the other two which you began with, you should be specific about the culture, about our country, and diversity. You should be specific.
How was it for your parents? Because your father was Muslim, your mother was Jewish, and for you growing up, did you see these as two separate cultures, identities, religions, or were you just switching back and forth?
We practiced both. Neither of the parents objected to. Both cultures were there. Both cultures, a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of Urdu. I'm not, being a dyslexic, so I'm not very good in the writing and reading of it, but we were taught both. We had Passover, we had Ramzan.
Mm-hmm.
During Passover, we were not supposed to bring anything from out, eat anything at home. All the masa, the halle, was all boiled eggs and everything, then we had to pray beneath the earth and above the earth, Borek Peri, Ames, and then Borek Peri, Adama, and then eat it. You know, the fruits that grow above tree and the vegetables that go beneath the tree, like beetroot, beneath the earth. And we used to, every evening, at every meal, we used to dip bread into salt. It was called mamsa, or no, not mamsa, hummus. And we had that we used to go to our grandparents. We had a very strong influence in our life because mothers, parents, we stayed with a lot. That's Matilda Abraham and Reuben Abraham was my grandfather, and Matilda Abraham was my grandmother. And my father's relatives used to come and go, and his culture was also part. We had Ramzan, we kept Rosas. So
that's amazing.
So what begins at home, you practice it outside. Charity begins at home.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another thing about India, I don't think there's a place in India where you could compare it to any part in the world. If you are being specific towards the diversity, that's known to everybody around the world. The unity that there is here. Otherwise, do you think the majority of Indians are the Hindu community? Do you think if there was any kind of bias or anything which is embedded in the character of the country, would Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan, Salman Khan be in the position along with Akshay and Sanjay Dutt and Hrithik Roshan and Ajay Devgan be on the same level? No. That means there's no prejudice. The audience is the majority community. So you go by this popularity that this is the culture of our country.
Absolutely.
And the other things are all drama, politically trying to divide.
That is true. That is true. Do we have Danny online right now? I don't see him. Do you?
It's very sad that Danny,
iPhone, I mean, yeah.
For that for Danny, all this is being done for that fellow Danny.
That's right. Because he wanted this time.
And he went and dug up everything possible around the globe. He found each relative, and if one individual had 5 relatives, he went and met all 5. It took him 11 years. Now today it's about 17, 18 years because he started this in late 2006 when Nadira auntie died, and thereafter my mother died in August. Auntie Nadira died somewhere in the early 2000s. He came down from Nadira basically. And then he said, this is a Pandora's box. Nadira's not the only Jew. And then he started asking who else, and then he came to me. And then I said, that's not there. Then I said about Auntie Rose. Then I said about Auntie Ruby. Then I said about so many people, and he started going on. And then he went to Rachel. Then he went to Auntie Rose's daughters. No, I think nieces. I think Rachel will correct me. Auntie Rose's daughters had a shop in the Taj, I think. Was it a bookstore or was it a flooring? They used to sell flowers, Rachel?
No, so my mom was a seamstress and a designer. The store was run by a beautiful Australian woman called Laura Hamilton. she came to India as an entertainer and a singer, and Tata, old man Tata, fell in love with her and gave her this incredible store right at the front of the Taj. So it was a store that she curated just amazing stuff. So my mom did the design of the fabric, and that became very well known. All these ships would come, the QE2 and all these fancy ships, and these rich blue-haired ladies would waltz in and buy half the store. But it was curated antiques and brass and woodwork from all over India, and the garments and the fabric and the scarves. So my mom was with that store for ages. My mom's name was Marjorie. She was the older sister. There were two girls, Marjorie and Cynthia. Cynthia immigrated after Grandma. Grandma came to LA with her husband, and then my aunt came. So really, I want to speak to something that was just said about being Jewish, and how I think for most of us, it was there was very little awareness of what it meant to be Jewish in terms of the world. In India, we were very coddled. I feel there was no, I was unusual because of my name. People could never say my name. It didn't come off people's tongue very easily. I think that's why Grandma chose Rose and stuck with Rose. But apart from that, I don't feel that I really began to understand what being Jewish and the burden of being Jewish meant when you came to the Western world. When you understood anti-Semitism and you understood history and the persecution. But back home, we were just another of the whole, the melding and network of all the different types of people that India has. And it was an amazing through line that Danny drew about how the Jewish women, and it's a joke when you say you're Jewish in New York, or you're a Jewish woman, oh my God, that means you've got an opinion. You're strong. You're not afraid of anything. It all sort of packages in being a Jewish woman. And it's interesting to me that at that time also, our grandmothers had that same, the phenomena was the same. These women, they were strong, they were bold, they were not bowing to anybody in society. They made their own path, they found success. And not only that, they forged a movie tradition, of women up front and center. I think that's fantastic.
So now I just want to show you, just Rachel, your reference. Our darling daughters. That's Rose Auntie down there. That's Auntie Rose. And that's my father. He was the hero. And my mother also was in the cast, but she was the side heroine. Auntie Rose was, this is Auntie Rose.
Lovely.
That's my father, Kumar. He was the hero.
He was a very famous hero as well. I want to open up questions to the audience. And my first question is from Dana Maria Lara. And I believe your question is for Rachel. Go ahead and ask the question. Just wave your hand so he knows to get you off of mute.
Okay. So first of all, I loved this movie. This was my guilty pleasure today. And also you could see I used to live in New York. I have an actual cab door from 1978 from a yellow checkered cab. And I won't even tell you how long it took me to get that, because people actually restore checkered cabs. So to buy a door, it was a long story. But I want to come back either as Miss Rose or Padma, because they are beautiful. And I thought, so I never knew the division and the fact that men had to play women's roles similar to in, Greek plays and Roman plays. But I found it fascinating that all of these women, your grandmothers, your mother, were pioneers of their time and so progressive. And I just wanted to ask, when you were able to finally see a movie of your grandmother's, what was it and what was your reaction?
And this
that's
is
to Rachel.
Rachel.
Well, I think the only full movie that I saw was Ajka Hindustani. I'm not quite sure. I saw clips mostly. To access those movies were hard. It was fascinating to me. It was, grandma is grandma. You know what I mean? It was such a leap to see her as this amazing, strong, gorgeous movie star. There's a sort of unreal element to seeing somebody you know and love up on the screen. And unfortunately, we were seeing it small. I tried to get a hold of trying to get some movies when I went to the Pune archives. But I haven't done justice, and that's really a guilt I carry, that I haven't really seen all her work, and it hasn't been archived. Danny's done an amazing job finding the clips, but it was quite fascinating at how progressive they were for me.
Yeah, it really was. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And one of the beefs that I had at the time that I was young was I just thought women were not portrayed, elegantly enough and well enough in the movies of the 80s, which is when I was growing up. And yet when you go back to these movies, that is not the case. There was an elegance, the whole male-female dynamic is much more sort of muted and decent. No one's thrusting pelvis, parts at each other. So it was really interesting to see that time there was such an elegance. I think they took a lot from Hollywood in terms of the way the men and women worked together. But then later on, it became a bit of a scramble for me.
Oh yeah, after what was the movie where there were so many kisses that it was banned for the next century? I don't know. I forgot the name of the movie depicted in this documentary, but I thought after that it was.
Alam Mara was the first talkie which had the first kiss.
Okay. Well.
Yes.
I thought after that, after they banned kissing for a long time in movies, I thought it was even more provocative how they pushed the envelope. And oh my gosh, every actress, the eyes were just, I don't know. I was talking to Rati earlier and I said, I need to learn how to do that. But it's so hard with glasses. But I just really enjoyed it and seeing the little, all of your contributions, your interviews within this documentary, I enjoyed as well. So,
Thank you.
I want to, sorry to interrupt, I want to just confirm. Somewhere near Wilson College on Marine Drive, Auntie Rose stayed, right?
Yes.
On the first
yes.
floor. Which was that building? Before Wilson College or after Wilson College? No, before.
There's a corner on the Marine Drive. There's a beautiful building with these columns, white columns.
With a circular balcony.
Yes. And she lived there for a long time until the war. And during the war, she was actually asked to leave because it was too, I think they were expecting some kind of, trouble. And she was right on the water. In the bay. So they moved her, she moved to Andheri after that. And then back to Kemp's Corner. But yeah, she lived in one of those gorgeous Art Deco buildings.
Yeah, I think the one that goes just before Wilson College, I remember that there was a circular balcony.
Yeah.
You have to go to Bharati Vidya Bhavan, that lane.
Yes.
On a high. Yeah. Okay.
Sama, can I ask Sama a question?
Please, go ahead.
Can you answer the question about seeing any of the older movies?
Your grandmother. What was the first movie you remember seeing of your grandmother?
Well, actually, most of my grandmother's films unfortunately got damaged in the archive, and I think there's only been one or two that have been able to be restored, and I saw them only very recently. And it's been quite, I mean, I've seen clips of them, but it's been quite fascinating because, like you said, you know, your grandmother, and then you see her on screen from a different era. So it was really fascinating and quite entertaining as well. And I think I've seen more clips of my grandmother's acting in Shalom Bollywood than I have otherwise.
Ah, wonderful. Lovely. I have a question from the audience, and it's a question from Pulin Kinkabwala from Chicago, and he has a question for Haider. Pulin, go ahead and ask your question. Pulin.
Oh, okay, I'm unmuted now. My question is for Haider. I was very fascinated to learn about your background. You had the real advantage of amalgamation of two cultures, but as a child with a Jewish mother and a Muslim father, I understand everything was normal at home, but when you went to school or outside in the society, do you find any strange looks or strange questions coming to you?
Never. Never. My personal experience, never. And I don't think the Jews felt the same, because we had relatives in Nagpada also, by Kalla. We used to go to the synagogue there, Magen David synagogue, for prayers. Especially at Kippur, when my mother used to fast at 4 in the evening to the next day's sunset, somewhere around about 7:30. And when prayers was over, you will believe when I tell you that they used to break it with the uneven bread, which is called kind of a massa. That's what, after the shofar is blown. And the Muslims used to come and supply it. They were the bakers.
Wow.
And
okay.
we are allowed to come to the synagogue. And they used to supply the bread. And today, all the synagogues in the country are being looked after by the Muslims. Go to Calcutta and you'll know. The Muslims are the caretakers and the keeping that, जिसे कहते हैं हिंदुस्तानी में इमारत को, I mean, रखना. And otherwise also there are very few Jews left to look after their own property.
Yeah, because they all left.
But I don't think we had any problem. No sniggers, nothing. No, nothing. This is there. You have a section of, in your own house, charity begins at home. Some differences, जब बर्तन साथ में हैं तो खड़खड़ आवाज आएंगे ना, when vessels collide, you have noise. So that happens even in society. It happens in your own brothers and sisters. 5 brothers and sisters have different views and a lot of debate and arguments among the house. So how can you not have it outside? How can you not have it outside? Are you have it in your own mother and your father? You are not to be an actor. You are going to be a lawyer. And the day you say you're going to be an actor, you don't enter this house. ये घर पे होता है भाई. No, I have decided to be an actor. Then stay out. मैं अपने वसीयत से तुमको दरखास्त कर देता हूँ. You are out of my will. Okay, I'm out. This happens at home, darling. You expect society to be any different?
Yeah.
It's not. It's common, and yet it's not there in the culture. It's not embedded in the human race. The racism started politically.
But can I extend Pulin's question with his permission a little?
Go ahead.
Because we then had the war come in, the Second World War. The war, and soon with the partition that came in. And that partition was a rude awakening for you, because your father decided that he wanted...
No, he didn't at that time. No, he didn't go at that time. He didn't go at that time. You're mistaken.
Okay.
He went in 1964 after Mughal Azam. till Mughal-e-Azam. Mughal-e-Azam is a film of the 60s, and you're talking of 47.
Right. So he was very much.
The song Zindabad, Zindabad, and Mohabbat Zindabad is picturized on my father. He's the sculptor. So you're mixing two things up. He didn't migrate then. It was after the separation in the early 60s, my parents, that he left. Now that's a different story. So don't mix up things. What I just told to me, everything else is political.
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, but that shameless Danny, I don't know how to give him. I'll give him a WhatsApp message. For him, we are all here accumulating. I get up at an odd hour.
And he's not here.
Shameless fellow.
Heather loved your script in Jodha Akbar. Are you writing anything else?
Yes, I'm writing a biopic called Shalom.
Oh.
It's a biopic of my mother.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, do any of you have, I have Danny's email and I've sent him some emails, but if any of you have him on WhatsApp, you know, maybe a quick WhatsApp message to him would help.
I know WhatsApp. And I'm going to tell him what's up.
Can I take another question from the audience for our cast members?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Speaking.
I wrote this in the chat, but I was just curious from some of the comments that were made earlier. Why is it that there is such little archival of India's earliest films? Because one would think, naturally, the historical value of these would be priceless. So I was surprised to hear that how difficult it was. It seems to be that this was one of the most difficult parts of maybe putting this documentary together. I'm not sure, but just getting all these different clips together.
Right.
I think, well, like in everything in India, you know, because of the volume of people and the volume of things, and I think it was just the organization was not very good, I think, in terms of archiving. And then I think the Pune archives had quite a lot, but I think it was, if I'm right, my dad will correct me if I'm wrong, there was a big fire that took place in the archives, and a lot of material got damaged in the fire, I believe. And I think that's what's caused a lot of the loss. Is that right, Papa?
The fire were in the studios, but the archives tried to retain them, but they were not equipped because old negative, you know, the emulsion just got worn out. It was and they didn't know how to retrieve. But you're right, in a lot of the studios, because it was an impermeable film. So a little spark or a little accident switch or a short circuit had caused a lot. Minerva, their negatives were burnt. Like just last few months ago, RK got burnt because of a short circuit. All his costumes, right from his first film, right up to the last film they made, all the negatives got burned. The costumes of Nargis, Padmini, Zeenat Aman, Raj Kapoor's, every actor's, he had a museum in that RK Studios. It got burned. There's nothing. Now it's become a housing society. Godrej made it an apartmental building. Anyway, she's right in the thing of a lot of negatives. And the archives lost it because of the films and negatives being very old, and they could not survive in them in itself chemically.
So thank you for answering that question, Sama. Can I take another question from the audience?
Sure, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, Rajan.
So
can I give a voice message to Danny before that?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Danny, this is Hyder Ali on WhatsApp, and I have come at this odd hour, got ready at about 3 in the morning, early 3 in the morning, to meet this for you. You don't have any shame, Danny? We are all assembled for you, and all you... Now, Danny, I need an explanation. I'm waiting. And that's my voice message on WhatsApp to Danny. It's gone. Here I Danny, this is Hyder Ali on WhatsApp, and I have come at this odd hour, got ready at about 3 in the morning, early 3 in the morning, to meet this for you. You don't have any shame, Danny? We are all assembled for you. All you... Now, Danny, I need an explanation. And I'm waiting. And that's my voice message on what to Danny. Now go ahead, please.
Introduce yourself and your name, and please ask your question.
Hi, I'm Rajan Kamath, and I'm a film buff. I just wanted to know a little bit about any one of you and your feeling about the difference between the culture of movie going and culture of movie watching at the time when some of these movies were made and today. Clearly, they were all displayed in a movie theater, which means that people got up and went to the movies and sat in the movies. Today, everybody is sitting in bed with their laptop on their lap, and it's a completely different experience. The concept of movie has been transformed. Could any of you say something about that in terms of your experience and your thoughts about the difference between watching a 35 millimeter or a 70 millimeter in a auditorium with 200 other people, as opposed to sitting with your mobile phone or your iPad? Please go ahead.
Is it to me, the question?
Anyone.
Okay. Culture of cinema was very, 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 very adventurous to begin with. Dada Saab Phalke. Before that, the Luminary Brothers, there was in Kolaba, there's an area called Kalagoda. Opposite Jangel Gallery, there was a hotel, when I think it was the Western Hotel, where the showing of the Luminary Brothers were shown. So only the elite who could afford to go to that 5-star hotel. Now it's the Army and Navy building. Rachel will know very well. I'm talking of the Army Navy building. Was a 5-star hotel before that. So it was premiered there. The French brothers had brought it, and it was an elitish kind of thing. Then Dada Saab Phalke wanted it to reach the common man. So they used to show it in tents, traveling tents, where projectors used to just show a reel, then take a break, unload the reel, rewind it, and wind the other one and put it on. So there was a gap in between. So in between this, which Auntie Rose also was in Madden Theatres, they were dancing girls and small skits. In between the changing of the reel, they had to keep the audience engaged in silent era, and they used to come and do these skits. So with my mother and my auntie Sophie, who was also an actress called Romila, all used to travel. It was the touring theatre. If they went outside Calcutta, the truck and the generator and everything in the tents used to go, chairs used to be laid, and when the operator used to change the reel, in between that 10 minutes or 15 minutes, these skits used to be played by these actresses and actors, and a dance which used to be done to keep them engaged. So this was the culture then. Now came in Talkie with Alam Mara in 1928, in the late 20s, where the first kiss Zobeda, the heroine, and Master Vitthal was the hero. That's the first kiss. Very, and Danny has shown that photograph. Very passionate photograph. Now, cinema became kind of a religion because Dada Saheb Phalke started getting impressed by the Passion of the Cross. It was on Christ. So he made it inspired by the Bible. He said, I'll make it inspired by our mythology. He made films on Krishna. So this is the introduction to cinema in India by Dada Saheb Phalke. So people would come, break a coconut, put a garland, do an aarti, because it was God's story. This is how it started. Then started fantasy from the Arabian Nights, fairy tales, and it became a culture celebration. Then, song, dance, and it was Sunday, Friday first show, 12 o'clock, advance booking, people stood in line. And they were crazy to see something moving in it. And in those days, you had to be in, there were curtains, black curtains, everything was dark, you were in a black hole, and one big, larger than life screen, big, you could see such a big close up. And people used to clap only seeing that. It was like a, chalo cinema jayenge. It was like a celebration. Chalo Eid hai, chalo Kippur hai, chalo, Diwali hai. A new film on Friday, people used to wait as a celebration. That became cinema. And then it was a different culture. You could not see the above the ankle of a lady in cinema. So what these directors would do, they would see that the costumes were so tight that the body could not hide behind any sari. So the vamp always was put into Western clothes so that her figure could be seen. And that was attributed to my mother, not to Auntie Rose. Auntie Rose was in a five-yard sari all the time covered. So she was a very sophisticated and Bharti Nari. But the vamp was Westerner. Everything is revealed by the clothes, tight clothes. So that became another attraction. Vamp started becoming a kind of a attraction. That's how Auntie Nadira became a superstar, Helen became a superstar, Mummy became a superstar as a vamp. So then, if further on, then some director said, no, we have to somewhere make the audience illuminating, even the Desi women, even our heroines, Bharti Nari, they should look appealing. So some directors started this, let's have a rain song. So they used to wet the heroine in the sari, in the rain, with the, so that because of the wet clothes, the clothes used to cling to the body. Because you can't show any other part. They would not lift their saris. And then after that came our era, where they started coming in skin clothes. And today it's nothing. You come in your undergarments. Whether it's John Abraham or whether it's Hrithik Roshan, they want to see him coming out of the swimming pool. And they want to see Katrina Kaif coming out in bikini. And today's the culture, as you have said, to coming to the past. Now it's in your drawing.
Can we hear some other opinions too, Rachel? And yes, please, Rachel.
That was such a fun ride. It took us on. No, I want to speak to the fact that I remember my father, talking about going to the movies. This is when, my sister and me were growing up, 70s, 80s. And he'd always berate us for dressing in, jeans and really sort of ruddy clothes, like how, go to college and then you go, how can you not get dressed for the cinema? And then talk about how for them going to the cinema was a very elegant evening. If you were invited to a premiere of a movie, oh my God, it was like, you really hit big time. Even otherwise, even just for a regular show, there was a bar, there was, people got dressed in suits and elegant dresses and saris. And it was like today how you would in New York go, say, to the opera, right? You'd never go in jeans. You'd dress, and there was a certain culture within the theater. And this is what my father kept telling me about. By the time I was a teenager, it was still exciting to go to a movie, especially, the first weekend. And yes, you're right. There were lines. There were lines. I remember Regal Eros for a big movie that opened, whether it was a coming from the US or whether it was a local movie. But there was such a feeling of being in a wondrous, magical space. And you knew everybody else in that space. It's like today I feel that when I go to film festivals, when you just know that everybody else in that zone is in the zone with you, is in that same world, you feel a camaraderie even though you don't see them. And the act of sitting in a dark cinema and the flicker of the movie starting is, to me, till now, I get my heart beating. Sure, we're streaming and we're watching, we've all got big TVs and all that. But it ain't the same thing.
It isn't the same thing at all, isn't it? Well, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for your question, Rajan. I think we are quickly running out of time. I'm open to taking one more question, if anyone has a question for Sama, Haider, or Rachel. No questions? Okay. All right. I just want to say this has been so incredible. When we saw this movie last year at our festival, and the audience was just blown away by it. They just loved it. We learned so much from the film, things that we never knew. And I'm curious to know how Danny even arrived upon this idea of, hey, I want to go look and try and figure out what's going on in that part of the world, because obviously he's from Australia, he's English, he's from Australia. So I was really curious about that and what his journey was. And I'm sure some of you, he must have talked to you about it. If you want to just tell us a few words, we have a couple of minutes and then I can wrap it up, because I do know.
Associate with Dwight. Dwight's sister stays in Melbourne.
Why? Yeah.
And Dwight's sister forwarded an article about Nadira auntie to Danny, saying that this Jewish big superstar of her times has expired. That sparked Danny to do a research on Nadira. That's how Danny came down to Bombay, because of Dwight's sister updating him about Nadira.
I see.
Now, the journey of the most dedicated human being I have seen and filmmaker in all my life, that for 11 years, the man didn't give up. And gradually, as he got a hint about somebody else having something more, he went to the end of the world. Be it Canada, be it America. He followed Rachel when she was in Juhu from Bombay, and after a few years gap, he went right to where she stays in America.
Yes.
That you can't get that kind of dedication by anybody, and the answers was very, very slow flowing. The man didn't say, I give up.
Yeah.
Whatever he could accumulate and bring together, he got funds, he went forward and he went forward. He made many other documentaries in between, and this was not seeing the light of the day. And come 11 years passed, and he got a very good premiere in Bombay, in the Bombay Film Festival, Mami. It was premiered here. He got a very good reception. I was there for about four screenings. So that's how Dani started, and that's how he ended. And it's for you all to agree that look at the reaction. Today is about 16, 17 years. It started in 2007, 2008. We are in 2020.
And he did have your mother.
It's still living, pulsating. It's going to live beyond Danny, me, anybody.
Exactly.
It's history.
It's history. He's really done a great job of putting this film down. I noticed too that he had a clip of your mother talking. Now, that was his clip, right? I mean, that she was alive at the time.
No. He took from documentaries. Yeah, there's a documentary made on her when she was crowned again after 50 years. She was 1947, but after 50 years, Persis Kambata wrote a book and invited everybody after 50 years, right from 47 to 97. She went and researched and took out 50 beauty queens from 47 to 97.
Wow.
That time when Pramila had to go again to receive that honor as the first Miss India.
I see.
Then, and we are the only daughter. In 1967, my sister, Naki Jahan, she became the beauty queen of India. Only mother and daughter in the entire world who were beauty queens of the same country.
To share that, yeah.
Naki Jahan. She was 67. So a documentary was made for an hour, Sparrow. It was made by Lakshmi, C.L. Lakshmi. So she made a 1 hour documentary, Sparrow, called The Life and Times of Pramila. It's on the tube also, I think. So Danny asked her permission and purchased something in the archive from her old films, Bekasur with Madhubala, and then Basant she did with whatever you have seen, that song. All that he got from the archives. And the interviews he got from Sparrow.
Heather, can I ask you a very quick question?
Please.
Why was her given name Pramila? Is there a story?
Okay. Okay. Esther Victoria Abraham was too long. And we were in the initial stages of cinema. So foreign names like Esther Victoria Abraham, Rose was all right because Rose understood, no, Gulab. Understood. So she retained her nose, Auntie Rose. And Auntie Ruby Myers, you can't put starring Ruby Myers. And she's playing a goddess. You can't do that. And so they started choosing names which, out of few 5, 6 names, they decided that they'll. Like my father was given the name after doing 3 films under the name Mitchell Ali. But when he worked in the film called Puran Bhakt, there was a riot in East Bengal and West Bengal, communal riots.
Okay.
And he was playing Puran Bhakt. He was playing a Bhakt, a historical figure who lived in Lahore and who the stepmother tried to seduce, and he refused to get seduced, and she got angry and out of temper told the father that he wanted to molest her, and the father told him to get out of the, and he left all his wealth and the princehood, and he became a saint. That is Puran Bhakt. And he was to play. Now the film was ready to release. But riots broke, so they held this film back. Because in those days, as I told you, they was doing something like a bhakt. People broke coconuts to the heart, did arti and saw a picture. So how could you put Vijay Ali in and as Puran Bhakt? So it was a dilemma. So they told the director, they told the producer, the distributors that we'll get a burnt theatre. We'll start further riots. So he changed the name of this actor. He's playing the lead, Puran Bhakt. So the director and the producers had a brainstorming, and the director was Kumar Devaki Bose. He was a royalty, he was a prince, like Kumar Sachin Dev Burman. They are royalties, so that's how they put Kumar. Kumar means prince. So Kumar Devaki Bose came up with this thought, okay, let me now say one thing. He's playing a prince. Let us give him a princely name. And after this name, I am predicting Kumar will not only be known as a prince, Kumar will also be known as an actor. And that's how the name Kumar was given. And thereafter, Devaki Bose refused to keep his name, Kumar Devaki Bose. He only kept his name thereafter as Devaki Bose as a director. So that's how Kumar got his name. So there are various, and Esther Victoria Abraham got it because you can't put Esther Victoria Abraham, Ruby Maya. So they got their names, Salochana, and my mother got Pramila. And that's a long story how they got it. I don't want to go into it. But I'm trying to tell you the culture of the time. We're living in a time where people were very traditional, Desi, Pardesi. We were always, whether it was French, whether it was Portugal, whether it was Dutch, whether it was the British, whether it was the Greeks who started whether it was the Mughals. India was always attacked because of being such a rich country in tolerance, in farming, in agriculture, in our weather. And then, that's it. I'm going some article in culture. Sorry.
Just wondered if Rachel had something to add. I just want to tell everyone that Danny did just get back to me, which is why I was looking down. And he said he didn't know how to join the conversation. And I did give him the details. But Rachel, if you want to sum up what Haider was saying. And
so I have 2 points to bring to this particular part of the discussion. One is, as you know, Haiderji was talking, and I was thinking, maybe that's one of the reasons why it got lost. The fact that all the Jews that were, the big actors of the time changed their names. The idea that they were Jewish disappeared. They became Hindus to the world at large. And I think this is another reason why it was not really understood that these women were actually Jewish, because they kind of wiped their names off their careers. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up was this fact that every time I travel and, living in the US, when I bring up the fact that I'm Jewish and that I grew up in India, it's such a source of complete fascination, one, and two, absolute lack of knowledge in the world at large, that there is a very strident, used to be, not anymore, but there used to be a strong Jewish community in India.
Danny! Shabbat Shalom, Danny! My God, thank God you're on. I was so disappointed, Danny. My God.
The moral of the story, people, is you don't mess with Haider Ali. That's the bottom line. I apologize to you all. There's no excuse on my part because it's a nice leisurely Sunday morning, but I couldn't find the link. And anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the film, and I hope you've all had a great conversation. And thank you for watching and this opportunity.
Thank you for being with us, Danny. We really enjoyed the film. You brought what might be a mundane piece of history to life with all of the different characters that you interviewed, and it was more than history for us. It, all the complexities and the emotions of the people that were involved in it just made for wonderful watching. And it's a beautiful historical document, if you may call it that we can keep forever. Many of the stars that you talked about were household names in those days, and I know my mother talked about them a lot. And the interviews really allowed us to look at these two different identities that exist, the cultural identity of the Indians, the cultural identity of the Jews, and what dynamic, the dynamism of these women, and the ability of the Indian culture to also allow all of the different cultures to exist side by side. I mean, that sort of came through in the film as well. And I was talking with Rachel and Haider, and Summer is here with us too. And I was just so curious as to how you even came upon this idea. And Haider sort of explained to us that, it was after Nadira's death. But I know that the audience, the remaining audience, because a lot of folks left at 8 o'clock, but we'd love to hear your journey.
Sure, and just cut me off if I repeat anything that you said at the time when I should have been here, which is basically people kind of get so this assumption that I'm a Bollywood buff, and I'm really not. And I guess I'm a Jew buff. And when I started making this film, I had never watched a Bollywood film in my life. I mean, Bollywood is big in the West, but I'm not or wasn't one of those Bollywood lovers. And I used to be an academic, and I had an Indian postgraduate student, helping me out with some, research working in my institute. And she got into some problems, and nothing major, with a landlord and with a supervisor and different things. And she came to me and I said, listen, I'll help you out. Not a big deal. And then a kind of pattern started to rise that every couple of weeks there'd be a knock on my door, and she'd walk into my office with this like gift that her dad had sent, which apparently is quite an Indian thing to do. I don't know. And they would be things that I wouldn't really need or want and were unnecessary, like a key ring or a pen with some pattern on or something. And I'd say, thank you very much, kind of politely. It's really not necessary. And this kind of went on and on. And one day there's this kind of, knock at my door. And, how do I say, really, your dad doesn't need to send me anything? And she walks in, she goes, oh, this is from my dad. And it was a piece of paper. And I thought I was going to pop it straight into the recycling. And I look at it, and it's an obituary for Nadira. Now, I'd always known there were Indian Jews. I knew I had a friend growing up in London whose girlfriend was an Indian Jew. So that was nothing new to me. But then there was this kind of Jewish Indian film superstar. It was like amazing. And, it's lovely to be surprised in life. And often, I don't know about you guys, I find, we hear more of the same and see more of the same. And it was like, oh, and I'd only actually just made my first film at the time. And I was kind of fishing around. I was kind of quite hooked to the documentary form. And I was fishing around for what could be my second film. And I thought, wow, Nadira. Managed to get some development funding, got myself off to India, and was talking to people about Nadira. And then someone said, oh, you really should talk to Haider Ali. And I said, who's Haider Ali? He said, Pramila's son. And I said, in my ignorance, who's Pramila? And then they go, Pramila. And it all came out, and I go, oh, well, okay. Then I was talking to someone else, and he said, oh, you know, I'm related to David. And I'm going, who's David? And it was revealed, and they said, you know, you should try and find. And I go, who? And they go, Rachel Rubin, who you've all no doubt met. Hello, Rachel. And so the story just organically grew. And in fact, I don't feel like I've finished with the story, because there was so much that couldn't make its way into the film, because a film, you know, has got to, you know, be thematically consistent. You know, it sounds like the basics, but the next scene has got to coming off the back of the previous scene and lead into the next scene. And there were so many stories and issues and characters that I couldn't get in. And there are so many things that I remember her, and there are so many things that I couldn't get in and have found out since. So just to give you a couple of tidbits of information, you know, Nadira, her career started in 1949. She only would have been 17 years old. And she was caught in this rainstorm, one of those, you know, very familiar rainstorms in Mumbai. And she took shelter, and it was standing under the shelter with the wife. She was an actress. Her name escapes me. Is it Dilip Kumar's wife? At the time, she'd been an actress, this lady whose name I can't remember. She'd been an actress, big actress in the 40s. And they got talking. And then she starred in that woman's husband's first film, in 1952, I think it was.
1 minute. It is not Dilip Kumar. It is Mehboob Khan.
Mehboob Khan. Right. So thank you for the correction. So you know, there's those kinds of things. Here's another little story. Raj Kapoor was in London in the 1960s for the colour processing of one of his films, and the play Fiddler on the Roof, which was not yet a film, that's a famous Jewish story. You're in America, so you've probably seen it maybe in Cincinnati, was on, and Topol, the famous Israeli actor, was performing this play with which he was synonymous. And Raj Kapoor managed to get front row seats. The play ends, curtain closes, curtain opens, out comes the Topol, the Israeli actor, and he put his hand up, you know, thank you, and he goes, you all think I am the most famous actor in Israel, but I'm not. Would you please welcome up to the stage the most famous actor in Israel, Raj Kapoor? And Kapoor gets up on the stage, Topol puts his arm around him, and these are just a kind of couple of little anecdotes that I have. And so my plan is actually kind of you know, there's many interesting stories, like Salochana, she got married, she went to Palestine, as it then was, British ruled Palestine, today Israel, to get married to a German Jewish refugee. It was a short-lived marriage. But the fact there were these German Jewish refugees coming in the 1930s is fascinating. And that, I don't know why she went to, it may have been that he had family in Palestine, as it then was, which is why they got married there. But there's so much more to this story that I haven't been able to tell. So we're kind of a few things that, so maybe just, you'll be the first to kind of know to look out for. One is, and Haida knows about this, we've kind of got this idea to dramatize this story in some way. 2, I'm hoping to write a book, Shalom Bollywood. And 3, I'm very excited. We've been talking to the Museum of the Jewish People, Bet Hatfutzot, in Tel Aviv, about actually creating a Shalom Bollywood exhibition. So that's a very long and tangential answer to your question.
Well, thank you. I mean, we're looking forward to getting to seeing more of your films and more of the films with all of the other archives and the other footage that you have. I'm sure you'll put it together and we'll be happy for it. I think at this time it is 8:30. Is there a question? I think the question was from Amitabh. Is there a sequel of Aarti Devi and Ramola? Is that the question, Amitabh? Your question?
He's on mute.
Yeah, well, it says here sequel.
Yeah, you mentioned in your website that we didn't pay attention to Aarti Devi and Ramola. So are you looking at them also?
Yes, certainly for the book and exhibition, you know, it's not like I can make a sequel to Shalom Bollywood. I did, you know, there was a character, for example, in the 1930s, a Jewish actor called Eliezer, and he starred with Sulochana. I think he also had a role in, I think he had a part in Alam Ara. You know, it's not like I can make another Shalom Bollywood or Shalom Bollywood 2, but in terms of other opportunities to tell the fuller story, I definitely, I mean, I was in touch, you know, I was in touch with Ramola's family in London. And one of the challenges in making this film was there was all this information out there about all these people who were Jewish stars. And in fact, Haida has been a big help to me in this, like Azuri. It was commonly written that Azuri, the dancer, was Jewish, which she was not. I was told that Patience Cooper, whose image you would have seen in that montage with Arata Devi, was Jewish. I spent a long time trying to track down Patience Cooper's family, which eventually I did in the UK. And they said, no, there's no Jewish heritage. I think she was Armenian from memory. So it got to the point, I made this film independently, as a lot of filmmakers do. I don't make films without being commissioned anymore because there's a roof above my head and I need to maintain it. But I spent 10 years making Shalom Bollywood, and it was really towards the end of that process that I found Ramola's family in the UK, and it just wasn't viable to go there and do an interview and then think about what's in a film. Every minute, every second, every frame that's in a film is shooting time, is editing time. If there's archive, there's the cost of archive time. So it got to a point, either, you know, I was going to finish this film with what I had, or it was going to take me another 10 years and my beard would be even whiter. So I just kind of finished it and that was it. But I do feel that it was a very conscious choice to put those photos in so that at least they were there and acknowledged in some way.
Danny, we have at least one producer here. Let me introduce you to Adrusha Apana. Adrusha.
Adrusha?
Maybe you can find it, right?
Yeah. Wave so that he knows who you are.
Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Hollywood. She works in Hollywood, and hopefully you guys, you know, can get to meet each other in some other forums as well. We had with us another director who just left, Aisha Marjara from Canada, and she made this movie Venus, which was an amazing movie that we showed at our festival. But she has left right now. So folks, I do want to thank you all for being here. I want to just thank a few of our fans that are remaining. Very quickly, Vikas, thank you, Adrusha, Amrita, Menaka, Om, and the Raturis. Ken Wick is here, Pulin Kinkabala, Pankaj Desai, Rita Kumar, and thank you for being here with us. I want to really emphasize how blessed we are that you guys, agreed to come on and give us the story behind the story of your film. Thank you so much, Haider Ali, for waking up so early in the morning and being there with us. And some of us staying up so late in London. And I know I saw your little daughter with you as well. Thank you for being with us, Rachel. We learned so much, and hopefully we'll continue to have this conversation. So Danny, you kind of missed the first part of it, but I'm so glad that you came on. Thank you so much for being here with us, Danny, and for lending your voice to the film, because we really wanted to hear from you, and I'm so glad that you could come on.
And I'm grateful to all of you, because I think, I try in selecting, when you make a film, you're taking, for a documentary, you're probably not going to get away with 3 years of your life by the time you develop it and you get it financed, and you go into production and you post until it's delivered, minimum 3 years. So it's a big chunk of time. So you've really kind of got to be committed to the story. And likewise, for people here at whatever time zone you're in, to give, a couple of hours to this is not something that I take for granted and is appreciated. But I think one of the reasons why I made this film, and one of the reasons why I'm grateful for people to watch this film, is because I'm drawn towards stories that I think matter in some way, even if they're kind of, just fun and entertaining, but that they have some meaning. And I think there is real meaning in the story of Shalom Bollywood, in the story of India and its diversity and the very unique Jewish experience there. And while I know we're kind of in politically turbulent waters all around the world at this present time, I think there is hopefully people can take some positives from Shalom Bollywood, that even though it's a historical story, it has some resonance and meaning in the present. So hopefully, as well as some just being informed and entertained, people have something a little bit to reflect upon as well when they.
Absolutely. You've left us with so many more questions and wanting so much more, and I'm hoping that at some point we'd be able to connect up again and ask those questions as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late, and at least that makes it a properly Jewish event, you should know, for someone being late. And you can always find me on Facebook or on Twitter, or through my website, Identity-Films, or through the contact on the shalombollywood.com. If again, because I was late, anyone wants to ask a question or whatever, feel free. And yeah, I will get back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Haider. It was so nice of you guys. Thank you, Sama. It was a pleasure talking to all of you. And Haider, I do want a copy of that photo in the back there. That seems like a nice.
I can send it on WhatsApp. On email, it's more easy to send me on WhatsApp. So you
okay.
can look
my
number.
Okay.
You email me. I'll email you my mobile number, and then on WhatsApp I'll send you this photograph of the 5 heroines, a landmark photograph. Okay.
Thank you so much. Danny, I do have lots of questions for you, but I know that our audience has been with us for some time, so we'll let them go now. It's, I think, an hour and a half, close to 2 hours. So thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Apologies again. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I think Lata needs one. I didn't. Thank you, Sama.